Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive into the world of Theodore W. Adorno?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's fascinating, right? How his work, even though it's from the 20th century, still feels so relevant, especially now in the digital age.
Yeah.
We've got some incredible excerpts to work with here, and they touch on some really big ideas, like Adorno's critique of modern society,
Right.
his views on music,
Yeah.
and this concept of fetishism, which I'm really curious to get into.
Absolutely.
So to kick things off,
Yeah.
can you give us a bit of background on Adorno himself? Like, who was this guy?
Well, Adorno was part of this group
Okay.
called the Frankfurt School.
Okay.
And they were really concerned about, well, the direction society was going in the early to mid 20th century. Think about it, like mass production,
Yeah.
the rise of consumerism,
Yeah.
and the growing influence of media.
Yeah.
They saw these trends as potentially chipping away at individual freedom and critical thinking.
It's interesting.
And it wasn't just some kind of abstract philosophical debate either.
Yeah. Adorno's work was deeply shaped by the pretty turbulent times he lived through.
Right, like living through 2 world wars.
Exactly.
And seeing the rise of totalitarian regimes. I mean, it's no wonder he was so critical of power structures.
Absolutely. It had a huge impact on his thinking.
Yeah, it's like he was almost looking ahead,
Uh-huh.
seeing the potential downsides of technology and mass media before they really even took off.
It's amazing.
Okay, so one of the concepts that really jumped out at me is this idea of the dialectic of enlightenment.
Right.
Now, I gotta admit, that sounds pretty complex.
Yeah, it can be a bit.
What's the core idea there, and how does it connect to our world today?
Yeah, well, the dialectic of enlightenment is this kind of paradoxical idea
Okay.
that the pursuit of reason, knowledge, the very things that were supposed to set us free,
Yeah.
could actually lead to new forms of domination.
So it's like
Yeah.
we're trying to liberate ourselves, but we might be trapping ourselves in a different way.
In a sense, yeah. It's counterintuitive. Yeah.
But think about it. How often do we just blindly follow those algorithms, accepting whatever information they give us without really questioning it?
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's almost like we've swapped one form of authority for another.
Right. Instead of priests or kings, we have these algorithms telling us what to see, what to believe, even how to think.
Exactly. And that leads us right into another of Adorno's key ideas, mass culture
Okay.
and the cultural industry.
So he wasn't exactly a fan of pop culture, right?
Well, he was deeply skeptical of how easily mass-produced culture, everything from music to movies could be used to kind of standardize tastes and potentially stifle individuality.
So was he saying that, like, all pop music is bad?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
His critique wasn't about specific genres. It was more about the way the cultural industry, like the whole system of production and distribution,
Yeah.
could just churn out content designed to keep us passive and entertained
Right.
instead of challenging us and really engaging us.
Hmm.
He worried this could lead to a decline in critical thinking and a kind of boring uniformity of taste.
It makes you think, what would Adorno say about the algorithms that shape our online experiences today, right?
That's a great question.
I mean, are they truly expanding our horizons or just keeping us in a bubble of what we already know and like?
I think you'd be very interested in how those algorithms, which are often built to maximize engagement and profit,
Right.
can create echo chambers and filter bubbles.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They might seem to offer choice, but do they really expand our perspectives?
I think that's something we could all stand and think about a little more.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's another Adorno concept I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
It's fetishism.
Oh, interesting one.
I find this one so fascinating because it seems to tap into our, deepest desires and motivations.
Yeah.
So break it down for us. What is fetishism all about?
Okay, well, for Adorno, fetishism was about how we tend to fixate on objects and symbols, but we kind of ignore the complex social relations and power dynamics behind them.
So it's like being obsessed with, say, a luxury car brand,
Yeah, good example.
but not acknowledging the working conditions of the people who actually built the car.
That's it, exactly. We're so focused on the image, the status, that we lose sight of the real cost,
The human cost, yeah.
the environmental impact.
All the hidden stories
Yeah.
behind the objects we desire.
Exactly. And Adorno argued that this fetishism goes beyond just consumer goods.
Ooh.
He saw it in how we relate to institutions, ideologies,
Okay.
even other people.
So, we're so focused on the surface, we miss the deeper reality.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And he connected this back to his critiques of mass culture and the cultural industry.
So,
Well, he argued that fetishism makes us more susceptible to manipulation
okay.
because we're sort of detached from the real consequences of our choices.
Hmm.
Think about how easy it is to get caught up in the latest trends, right?
Yeah, go.
Buying things we don't need, chasing experiences that are ultimately kind of empty.
It's like we're constantly being sold something, whether it's a product or an ideology or even like a certain version of ourselves.
That's a good way to put it.
It's
Yeah.
almost like a system of illusions.
In a way, yeah.
It can be hard to see how to break free from that.
It definitely is a challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting how Adorno ties that fetishism into our like susceptibility to being manipulated. It's like we're kind of all caught up in this system and it's tough to see a way out.
But speaking of challenging systems,
Yeah.
one of the things that really stood out to me in the excerpts was this concept of negative dialectics.
Oh, right.
Now, I gotta be honest, that sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
A little bit, yeah.
What's the deal with that? How does it fit into Adorno's whole way of thinking?
Well, you see, Adorno, he wasn't a big fan of easy answers, or neat solutions.
Okay.
He felt like a lot of traditional philosophy tried to smooth over contradictions.
To force everything into these nice, harmonious holes,
Right.
and that just ignores the messiness of reality.
So it's like negative dialectics is his way of saying we should embrace the tension.
Exactly. The negativity, you could say,
Okay.
to really understand anything.
So instead of looking for one ultimate truth,
Right.
we should be cool with the idea that things are, well, messy,
Yeah.
contradictory,
Uh-huh.
and always changing.
Yeah, always in flux.
It's kind of like when you think about defining your own identity.
Yeah.
We often think, I am this or I am that. But our experiences, relationships, the world around us, it's all constantly changing who we are.
Right. Becoming is more accurate than being, maybe.
And it makes me think about social media and how it encourages us to present these like curated versions of ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about image fitting into certain categories.
I think Adorno would say that this pressure to conform, to always present a perfect, consistent image, actually stops us from really figuring out who we are and what we believe.
So with negative dialectics, we should embrace those gray areas,
Exactly.
the unanswered questions, and be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Adorno saw this way of thinking, this critical questioning approach, as crucial for pushing back against any kind of thought control.
Yeah, because he saw that firsthand, right?
Right, especially with the rise of those totalitarian regimes.
It's like he's saying, hey, blind faith in any ideology, no matter how appealing, can be dangerous.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
But if he was so critical of society, did he have any hope for the future? Was he just a total pessimist?
Well, that's a good question.
Or did he see any way things could change for the better?
He wasn't really a utopian thinker, at least not in the traditional sense.
But okay.
He didn't believe there was some perfect blueprint for society just waiting to be found.
But he wasn't completely hopeless, right?
No, he wasn't. He saw utopia as something we kind of approach indirectly.
Oh, interesting. How so?
By constantly questioning the way things are, critiquing existing structures, and pushing for more justice and equality.
So not building a utopia from scratch.
Right.
But dismantling the things that make our reality dystopian.
Yeah, it's more about recognizing that creating a better future, it's a process. It's messy, it's ongoing,
Right.
and it can be uncomfortable sometimes. It means facing hard truths
Yeah,
and challenging those in power.
that makes a lot of sense. But what did Adorno see as the biggest obstacles to that kind of progress? What was holding us back in his view?
I'd say one of his biggest concerns was the growing dominance of what he called instrumental reason.
Instrumental reason.
Yeah, it's a way of thinking that puts efficiency and control above everything else.
It's like the ends justify the means no matter what.
Exactly. And Adorno saw this everywhere, in how we organize work, how we consume, even how we relate to each other. He worried it was making the world a colder, more dehumanizing place.
It's like we're becoming robots, just going through the motions, optimizing our lives for efficiency instead of meaning.
That's a great way to put it. And he saw the cultural industry as a prime example of this instrumental reason at work. Just churning out standardized products to maximize profits.
Regardless of their artistic value or their impact on, well, our souls.
Exactly. And he worried this would lead to a decline in critical thinking. and a kind of general apathy toward the world's problems.
Right. We're all just lulled into this state of complacent consumerism, distracted by the shiny things while everything else falls apart.
It's a powerful image.
So instrumental reason is one obstacle, but what else did he see as standing in the way?
Another major concern was the persistence of authoritarianism.
Given what he lived through, that makes sense.
Right, seeing fascism rise in his lifetime, he knew how easy it was for societies to slip into totalitarian control, even those that seemed democratic on the surface.
That's a pretty scary thought, especially these days.
It is.
But how did he see authoritarianism showing up in modern societies?
He argued it could be subtle, like the increasing power of corporations, the influence of media on public opinion, even just the tendency to conform and not rock the boat too much.
So it's not always about dictators and overt oppression.
Right.
It's about these sneaky ways our thoughts and behaviors are controlled.
Yeah, and he believed it was crucial to be aware of those tendencies.
Right. Question authority.
Right.
Resist the pressure to just go along with things.
Exactly.
So we've got instrumental reason and authoritarianism as two major roadblocks to a better world. But what did Adorno think we could actually do about it? Did he offer any solutions?
Well, he believed that critical thinking was our most powerful tool.
Critical thinking.
Yeah, the ability to question assumptions, analyze information, and resist easy answers.
It's like that saying, don't believe everything you read.
Exactly. We need to be skeptical, do our own research, think for ourselves. And he felt this was especially important when engaging with mass culture.
Okay, so not rejecting everything outright, but being aware of the messages, the ways we might be influenced.
And making conscious choices about what we let into our lives.
Be an active participant, not just a passive consumer.
That's a great way to put it.
Did he have any other suggestions for combating these negative trends?
He was also a big believer in the power of authentic art.
Okay, but didn't he criticize the culture industry and its tendency to, mass produce unoriginal stuff?
He did, but he believed that true art that challenges us and pushes boundaries, that kind of art has the potential to disrupt those forces. It can shake us out of our complacency, make us think differently, offer a glimpse of something beyond mass culture.
So it's not about rejecting all popular culture.
Right.
It's about seeking out art that is genuinely engaging, thought-provoking.
Exactly. Art that makes us uncomfortable forces us to question our assumptions. He believed that's how we develop our ability to think for ourselves and resist the pressure to conform.
Okay, so critical thinking and engaging with challenging art. Two strategies for navigating this complex world we live in. But did he offer any thoughts on how we can actually create a more just and equitable society?
Absolutely. Adorno was deeply committed to social justice. He was really appalled by the inequalities he saw around him. And he believed it was crucial to work towards a world where everyone has a chance to thrive.
It's inspiring that he wasn't just an armchair philosopher. He actually wanted to make a difference in the world. What did he suggest we do to achieve that vision of a more just society?
Well, he believed it required both individual action and systemic change.
Okay.
He saw education as a crucial starting point.
Yeah, so it's not just about memorizing facts and figures. It's about developing that ability to think critically.
Exactly.
And question things.
And challenge injustice. And of course, he believed in political activism, working to change the structures that create and perpetuate those inequalities.
Okay, so it's not enough to just have good intentions.
Right.
We need to take action.
Exactly.
But on a political level, what did he suggest? What kind of system did he think would work best?
Well, he was critical of both capitalism and communism.
So he wasn't a fan of the status quo.
No, he saw flaws in both systems. He thought they could both lead to domination and inequality. He was wary of grand narratives and utopian visions, too. He thought they could easily lead to totalitarian impulses and the suppression of individual freedom.
So he was skeptical of both extremes. What did he offer as an alternative?
Instead of laying out a specific blueprint, he emphasized the importance of ongoing critique and self-reflection.
Okay.
He believed the path to a better future lies in constantly questioning our assumptions, challenging power structures, and striving for greater justice and equality.
So it's less about finding the perfect ideology and more about developing that critical and engaged mindset
Exactly.
to help us navigate the complexities of the world and work towards a more just and equitable future.
That's a fantastic way to summarize it, and I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from Adorno's work. He reminds us that the fight for a better world is never over. There are no easy answers. And we always need to be questioning, challenging, striving for something better.
It's like he's giving us a toolbox for dealing with the challenges of modern life. Critical thinking, engaging with art, a commitment to social justice, and a healthy skepticism of those in power.
That's a great analogy.
And it's up to us to use those tools to make the world a more just, more equitable, and more humane place.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's amazing how Adorno brings all these different ideas together, like critiques of mass culture and the importance of social justice.
It's all connected.
He weaves them into this like whole worldview. It's definitely challenging, but also really rewarding to, try to wrap your head around it.
Definitely.
And speaking of challenging, there's this one quote from Adorno that I keep coming back to.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels especially relevant today. It's his famous statement about the Holocaust. To write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric. It's so powerful and so provocative.
It is.
What do you think he meant by that?
That quote has been debated for decades.
I bet.
It's not an easy one to grasp, really.
Yeah.
But I think on one level, Adorno was expressing how limited language and art really are.
Yeah.
In the face of such unimaginable horror. How can words, even the most beautiful poetry, ever capture what happened during the Holocaust?
Right. The suffering.
Or loss.
It's almost like you're trying to fit an ocean into a teacup.
Exactly. The scale of it just overwhelms our ability to even understand it, let alone express it through art.
And I think maybe Adorno was also wrestling with something even deeper, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like a crisis of meaning in Western civilization.
The Holocaust really challenged our basic assumptions about progress.
Yeah.
Reason.
Human nature.
All of it.
Like after witnessing something so horrific, how can we still believe in those Enlightenment ideals that were supposed to be guiding us?
It's like the whole foundation crumbled.
Right. And suddenly, all those stories we tell ourselves about human progress and enlightenment, they seem, naive at best, maybe even dangerous.
And I think that disillusionment is reflected in Adorno's statement.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that all art created after Auschwitz is bad.
Yeah.
It's more of a challenge to really confront those big moral and philosophical questions that the Holocaust raised.
So it's not about silencing artists.
Right.
It's about encouraging them to engage with history.
Yeah.
To acknowledge the darkness that's now part of our understanding of the world.
Exactly. Adorno was urging artists, intellectuals, all of us, really, to engage with these questions responsibly, thoughtfully, ethically.
It makes you think about how we often try to avoid those uncomfortable truths of history.
Right. We try to distance ourselves.
Yeah, but Adorno's saying we can't do that.
No.
We have to remember to bear witness, to grapple with those difficult questions.
Absolutely. And I think that's a crucial part of Adorno's legacy. That insistence that we engage with the complexity of the world, even when it's painful.
Yeah.
Even when it challenges what we believe.
So it's not about easy answers or comforting illusions.
Right.
It's about embracing the messiness, the contradictions, the darkness.
Exactly. And maybe in doing that, we can find some hope.
Yeah.
A way towards a more just, compassionate, and humane future.
Wow, what an incredible journey this has been.
It has.
Diving into Adorno's world, we've covered so much, from critiques of modern society to reflections on the Holocaust.
It's been a lot.
It's been challenging, but it's also been incredibly enriching.
It really has.
And to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep exploring the work of Theodore W. Adorno.
There's so much there.
Keep questioning, keep challenging, keep striving for a better world.
Absolutely.
And until next time, keep diving deep.